what is it? Which one is it?
BZA.
BZA 2152. We need your paperwork, so if you have that, please come up if you're in the audience.
I call to order the Area Board of Zoning Appeals of Tippecanoe County meeting of April 24, 2024. First item on the agenda is the roll call, please.
Steve Clevenger.
Present.
Gary Schroeder.
Present.
Tim Vanderplatz.
Present.
Robert Novak.
Present.
Brad Hallberg.
Present.
Ed Butts.
Present.
Rabita Raj Karnakar.
Present.
Shows everybody is present.
We have a quorum, and everybody's here. Next item is approval of the previous meeting minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the meeting, or from the March 27, 2024 ABZA public hearing as submitted.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any corrections or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business.
All cases are now ready to be heard.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and take the public hearing motion, please.
I move that there be incorporated into the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, the application, and all documents filed here within. The staff report, the recommendation on the applications to be heard this evening, and responses from the checkpoint agencies.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to describe our procedures for this evening. Each case will be heard following a motion and a second from the board. We will ask the staff to report on its findings. Following the staff report, we will ask the petitioner to present his or her case, after which anyone wishing to support the petitioner's request for a variance or special exception will be asked to come forward. After hearing from the petitioner and those speaking on his or her behalf, we will ask those speaking against the petition to present their arguments. The petitioner will then be allowed to rebut arguments raised by those in opposition to his or her petition. Following the rebuttal, the board may wish to ask questions of the petitioner, supporters, and opponents of the board or of the staff. The staff will have the opportunity at this time to make any necessary clarifying comments. We will then vote by use of a prescribed ballot. 4 votes are necessary to make any decision. In the absence of 4 votes, either for or against, the petition is automatically continued to the next meeting. Please observe the following guidelines for the sake of time and fairness to all. State your name and address for the record before you speak. After you speak, we ask that you please sign in on the sheet at the staff table, right there where Ryan's pointing to. And if you're the petitioner, you don't need to do that, but if you're in favor or opposition. So limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Do not repeat arguments that have been brought up by others. Remember that all visual aids used to support your arguments will remain the property of the board. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. Please step out of the room before using your cell phone. And with that in mind, we'll take our first case.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2126 Clinton M. Cordy. Petitioner and owner, represented by Laura Cordy, is requesting a special exception to allow a transient guest house operating 24 hours a day, 7 days per week, for a maximum of 8 guests in an R1 zone. The property is located at 906 Princess Drive, West Lafayette, in Wabash, 07, Southwest 24-4, with conditions and comments continued from the March 27th ABZA meeting by inconclusive vote.
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll hear from staff, please. Ryan?
Okay, well, I'll kind of stick to our addendum, but if there's questions about the other part of the report, we have presented it before. But here's our location, and here's the site. Here's their site plan. So the addition, since we last met, is a new commitment. It is identified as commitment number 3. The petitioner added this to their petition, and it reads, the special exception ceases to be valid if changes in ownership from the petitioner or the petitioner's immediate family members, wife or children, an LLC created by the petitioner or petitioner's immediate family, or the management of the parcel changes from the petition or petitioner's family, wife, siblings, children, etc. So we've seen commitments like this in previous petitions, and so this one is sort of adding this on to it. In terms of staff's opinion, it is unchanged. We are recommending approval with the condition and the now 3 commitments. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Laura Cordy, 4821 Old State Road, 25 North, Lafayette, Indiana. The pictures that they have up on the screen is just kind of giving you guys a visual of some of the houses on the streets. This is the house next to us, which, when sold, was bought up by somebody that lives out of state. We've never actually met them. It's had an assortment of renters long-term. It's got college kids in there now. The management company, when the drainage pipe had to get unclogged, they left the yard a mess. Nobody ever came back to reseed it. Looks horrible. You can see some of the siding that's up. I don't have a clicker for some of the other pictures. The next picture of the house on the corner with the long grass, that's sat vacant for over a year now. Again, long-term rental. Next, that's 2 houses down. Again, another rental. They don't do very good jobs taking care of the yard. That's another picture of the vacant house. There should be, and then we have these oh so attractive apartments across the street from us. Princess Drive is 2 blocks long. As mentioned in previous meetings, about half the street are rentals. My understanding there is an Airbnb or a transient guest house on the street. I don't know if it's one that ever officially got approved or not. But we've said all along we have no issue with, if granted the exception, it's staying with us and our family, because part of the thing is we plan on maintaining it. And even though it drives me a little bit nuts when past opposition has said, this isn't personal, it is very personal to me. I've worked for everything we have, and so to be called, these rich parents of college kids need to quit doing this. I'm far from it. I didn't grow up with generational money. I don't have family. Both my parents are deceased. To be able to have that opportunity to give my kids a foundation and not have to put out every detail of my personal life to try to say that I have some kind of hardship to get this granted, it is very personal to me. I know the opposition, the same people every time that say, oh, neighborhoods need neighbors. I don't know that they've ever come to our actual neighborhood. Some of my personal interactions with them, I have a hard time feeling that they truly care about the greater good. And to top it off, the state code actually lists what reasons a short-term rental property can be limited. It says a unit may require special exception, special use, or zoning variance for the short-term rental property that is in a residential zoning district or classification of a unit. However, this unit may not interpret and enforce the unit zoning regulations for a special exception, special use, or zoning variance in a manner that is intended or has had the effect of prohibiting or unreasonably restricting short-term rentals of property to which this section applies. Denial of the special exception, special use, or zoning variance for short-term property rental may be appealed in accordance with IC 36-7-4. It does limit some specific reasons why you could prohibit it or limit it: fire and building safety, sanitation, transportation, traffic control, pollution control. Our residents, whether it's a long-term rental or short-term rental, doesn't violate any of those. We've had the rental inspection done by the city of West Lafayette for it to be approved as a rental, and they're required for the short term as well. I know there's concerns about schooling, but the opposition is asking you to vote on correlation, not causation. No one factor is causing this decrease in students at Westside schools. If anything, it's the almost 90% of college students living within West Lafayette city limits. Even the housing report that West Lafayette City paid for says by, I think, 2030, they're projected to have 50,000 residents in West Lafayette. That's causing this huge housing shortage. And it even says in there, that's assuming Purdue's enrollment stays the same. I don't know if you guys have looked at the enrollment the last 10 years. We had a record-breaking year. It's over 52,000 students, the highest Purdue's ever had enrolled at one time. They make up over 75% of residents in West Lafayette. I would say that even that in and of itself is not a causation, but it has a much stronger correlation to West Lafayette isn't the neighborhood a lot of these people grew up with. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Hello, my name is Kevin Goslin. I live at 800 Princess Drive, just a block away from Clint and Laura's house here. So Clint and Laura, they are community members. They're active in our community. They will take care of this property, whether it's a transient guest housing or long-term rental. Denying this is not going to solve the housing crisis. There's a lot of more factors involved with that. The housing prices are too high, salaries are too low. There's many different factors going into this. This one transient guest housing will not change this housing shortage. There are many vacant houses in the area. So if there's a housing shortage, why do we have so many vacant houses in this neighborhood? And there's a couple of pictures that she showed earlier. There was one that has been vacant for over a year, and it's just kind of poorly maintained, looks poor, like it's poorly maintained. Yeah, it's just a mess. Neighborhoods need neighbors, I agree, and someone will be at this house, and transient guest housing is a solution to it. Most of our block does have vacant houses. One person is out of state most of the year, so his house is not lived in most of that time. Another house, there's a couple that come back for sporting events, so that house is vacant most of the time. And there's another one that's vacant for over a year as well. So there's a lot of vacancies. And with this transient guest housing, they will be occupied by people. There will be neighbors there. There are 2 long-term rental properties on our block. They have been poorly maintained. They have kind of gone downhill aesthetically, and I feel really bad for them because they are just not maintained. And this is also for not a full-time transient guest housing. There can be long-term rentals here. So this is just an option for Clint and Laura to say, hey, in between these long-term rentals, might as well have some guests enjoy the house. You know, it'll be lived in, it'll be maintained, there'll be neighbors. It's a whole lot better than having a vacancy. So I'm very much for this in our neighborhood. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition.
Hi, my name is Haley Little. I live at 800 Princess Drive, West Lafayette. We live on Princess Drive. We know our street, we know the issues on our street, and we know that an Airbnb would actually be beneficial on our street. There is an Airbnb already on our street, and it has been a welcomed part. We have friends and family who have wanted to use the Airbnb to be close to us. We have a fixer-upper house, so we are not able to have company at the moment, so it's been a nice asset if anyone has wanted to stay there. And because of this, we have established contact with the owners of the Airbnb house, so if there were ever issues that arise, we could get in contact with them. The Airbnb is one of the nicer houses on the street and is very well maintained. In our 2 years of living here, we have had no issues with the Airbnb. The police have not had to be called. There's been no parties. It's been relatively quiet. Airbnbs versus, I know there's hotels, but there are benefits to having Airbnbs in our community. We did have someone rent out the Airbnb for a month while their daughter, who's a college student, had broken her leg, and so that they could help her recover. We've had other people there for holiday gatherings and be able to have a holiday meal together with their family, with their college students. I also come from a family with special needs, and having an Airbnb option would have been fantastic for my family. We could have traveled as a family together, but there's no way we could have taken my brother to a hotel. And then the other nice part about Airbnbs is that they get reviewed. In order to keep selling or keep renting your Airbnb, you have to keep getting positive reviews, and that keeps the house in better condition. West Lafayette has been increasing enforcements, and despite their efforts, our rental properties are still very poorly maintained. We consistently have trash blowing all over our street from the rental properties. And as you've seen, the yards have not been maintained. They have not been mowing or taking care of the outside of it. As I said, our house is a fixer-upper. That's the only way we could have afforded moving to West Lafayette. There's no way that we could purchase Clint and Laura's house at the price that it would go for on our street. Our house was actually poorly maintained for a long time. It was vacant for 8 years. We are very invested in fixing it up and wanting it to look nice. I mean, it was in rough shape. We had holes in our fascia and our gutters and just looked really bad. So we care about our home, our value, our street, and we know that this house will be maintained by Clint and Laura, even though they moved into their new house last fall. We see them multiple times a week driving on our street, checking in on this house, maintaining it. So we are hoping that you will vote yes to this Airbnb, as this would be valuable to our street and keep at least one house maintained. And as has been said, it will have people living in it. So there will be people there. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition. Speaking in opposition to the petition.
Hello, Jennifer Manskiver, Director of Development for the City of West Lafayette. The city received the results of our housing study earlier this month, and it shows that we have a housing deficit of over 5,000 units right now. And as you guys all know, we have increased economic development needs within the community that's going to further exacerbate those housing needs. Earlier this month, our city council also passed a resolution requesting that the Area Plan Commission consider a prohibition on transient guest housing in R1 zoning, including R1, R1U, R1A, R1B, R1T, and R1Z zones. One of the best ways that we can meet the current demands and the future demands is to protect our existing housing stock. We are asking you to not support this petition today. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition. Please be prepared to come on up if you're going to plan to speak in opposition.
Nobody else wants to talk, yeah. Hi there, I'm still Rich Hogan. I still live at 825 Robinson Street. You guys must be sick of looking at me. I'm not going to give you the lecture on real estate speculation. I just want to respond to the personal. This neighborhood has gone, can I say to hell? That's an exaggeration. These particular pictures were cherry-picked. They're some of the worst-looking structures. Right next door to the proposed house is the house that Professor Harvey Marshall and Dean Joan Marshall lived in for many years. I've been in that house many times. So even though I live a few blocks away, this is on my bike route. My esteemed colleagues lived next door. Down the road, one of my wife's colleagues, Max Aprile, and his wife, Jacqueline, lived there. This was a very nice, stable, middle-class, owner-occupied neighborhood for professors who wanted to walk to work. It could be that again. And the city doesn't want you to do this. The neighbors don't want, well, two neighbors want you to do it. That's good. But the neighborhood, the voters clearly don't want it, right? Nobody wants it except the petitioner and, of course, the real estate interests, and we don't really need to get into all of that. So please, follow the city's advice. Do what the city is asking you to do. Vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition. Anyone else wanting to speak in opposition? If not, you have a chance to rebut.
Thank you. There were a lot of things I didn't include because, again, this is our third time in front of you guys. Even the resolution that the West Lafayette City Council passed, it doesn't meet the standards set forth in the Indiana Code for the reasons you can limit, prohibit, or restrict a transient guest house. We bought that house in 2016. I'm sure it was a very nice neighborhood 10, 20, 30 years ago. But the reason the neighborhood looks like it does isn't because of Airbnbs. It's long-term rentals that, like I said, nobody manages. We still do all the yard work. We put new windows in the older section of the house. Like I said, my youngest son goes to daycare in West Lafayette, which I hope you approve their request. They're the ones after us. So we're not out of state. It's not somebody else managing it. We have family in town on my husband's side that if we are traveling and someone's in there, whether it be a weekend, a week, a month, 3 months, whatever the term is, we have backup. We have plans in place to make sure that this house is maintained. We want to be able to give our kids a good foundation. We have worked very hard to be at the point where we are, to be able to keep this house and not have to sell it. Because, again, we don't want it to see it look like all the other rentals on the street. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Go ahead, Gary.
I have a question for the petitioner.
Please come back up to the mic.
You had showed us pictures of the other houses on the block. Do you happen to have a picture, street view of your house?
Might take me a second to find it.
That's
Right
it?
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
It was more maybe for the staff. There was a condition, and I just wonder if you'd read that again. I didn't see it in the packet. Maybe I missed it.
It's under the additional information.
Additional information.
It's
On
in the
second
addendum
paragraph.
of the
Okay.
report.
I got it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, would you like it read?
Yeah, just go ahead, please.
Sure. The
With
condition reads, a permit to operate a transient guest house must be obtained from the administrative officer for West Lafayette. So it's a standard condition for a case
Yeah,
like this.
The commitment, I guess.
The
Oh,
commitment,
the
yeah.
They had a
commitment. I'm
commitment.
sorry, yeah. You're referring to the new one that was added,
Yes,
correct?
thank
Okay, all right, thank you. The special exception ceases to be valid if changes in ownership from the petitioner or the petitioner's immediate family members, a LLC created by the petitioner or the petitioner's immediate family, or the management of the parcel changes from the petitioner or petitioner's family.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I have would like a clarification of that, because it says, changes in ownership from the immediate family members, and then it says an LLC created by the petitioner or the petitioner's immediate family. If they create an LLC, then is it changes in ownership of the LLC or if the LLC maintains control, it could go on indefinitely? I'm not a lawyer, but...
Yeah, maybe the petitioner could explain your intent.
I'm not either. My intent was, we have done the paperwork for an LLC, and we didn't want to, again, come back here 3 or 4 times to get it approved under the LLC name. Our intent is if we are not the ones owning and managing it, either with our names listed on the property or an LLC that is owned and maintained and managed by Clint and myself, the only other people that we'd want to transfer it to is our children. Our 2 youngest are 8 and 4, so it's going to be a while before they can have property in their name. Because again, living in a community by Purdue, if my children, don't necessarily want to live with mom and dad while they're in college, they could live there. If they choose to stay here once they're done with school, again, it's something that they could take over the property.
Right, that's...
However you want it worded, to say if we are not the ones owning or maintaining it in person or LLC, that the exception ceases, we are completely fine with that.
It's probably fine as written. I mean, an LLC, you can tell on Indiana Secretary of State who owns the LLC and who would be administrating that LLC. So I mean, if it,
I guess I'm trying to find it, make sure that the commitment really is a commitment and that it's not, they couldn't go out and sell it directly to somebody else, but can they form an LLC and then sell that LLC to somebody else, and then
The only
it
reason
goes
I didn't
on
list the LLC
in
name,
perpetuity.
I had checked with Amanda. She said to do it, we'd basically have to start the process all over again if we were going to list it as the LLC petitioning for it.
If it shows them
And even
that-
at that,
yeah, if
your
it's
point
showing
of
them
we
as
could
a,
sell that LLC.
What
You would
is
be able-
the current ownership status?
The current deed is in my husband's name.
Are
We
you
weren't married when
claiming
we bought it.
homestead on that property?
The paperwork was filed when we purchased the house in Lafayette, so the homestead should transfer to the Lafayette property. So our taxes will essentially close to double on that house.
Currently, it's not under LLC.
We have not changed the deed over now. We have filed for the
The
LLC.
idea is to convert it to an LLC so that the LLC would then own it. I guess I was concerned about the change in ownership of the LLC, that this could go from one owner to another owner, and it really
Like I said,
not
I'm
be-
happy to word it as an LLC owned by Clint, myself, or one of our children. And like I said, our intentions aren't to hire a management company. Like I said, the only other person or persons would be, my husband has 2 siblings that live in town. If for some reason we were out of town and something, there was a storm, there was hail damage or whatever, that we're just trying to cover our bases of, they would kind of be our fill-in property management when we were out of town.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
No, but thank you for that clarification, and I think,
Yep.
Tim, I think that the intent
Yeah.
is the
I
LLC
get
is
the
owned by the
intent of
family.
it, so I
Yeah,
just wanted to
so-
make sure
Good
there wasn't a
question.
loophole there.
Right. I mean, I think we should clarify that
You think we
LLC needs to be under their specific names or their children's name, and not just LLC.
And not just LLC.
Yep.
So it could be done where you could print out the Secretary of State to show who the managing members are and the ownership of that LLC. It's pretty quick
Needs to be them.
print that from the Indiana Secretary
Right.
of State. That'd be fine. I mean, if they transfer in an LLC, that would be supplement that could be added.
Yep.
Did somebody want to make a
Would you like to make the motion?
motion
Yeah, sure. So,
to modify that?
yeah, make a
commitment?
motion for the ownership in the LLC, that it is a LLC managed and controlled by the current owners, or it sounds like it would be their children.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and does that sound reasonable to you?
I am perfectly agreeable with that.
You're agreeable to that? Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we now have that added. Does staff have enough to, based on what Tim said?
Yes.
So as the commitment is amended, any other comments or questions on the original motion? To vote on this? If not, we've got a ballot.
I show 5 votes in favor and 2 votes opposed.
The special exception has been granted. And we'll go ahead and hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2146, 3504 Morehouse. Petitioner and owner, represented by Kevin Riley of RTS Law Firm, is requesting the following variances for a proposed expansion of a church daycare in a GB zone. 1, to reduce the side setback from the north property line to 7.8 feet instead of the required 30 feet. 2, to reduce the required parking from the minimum 81 spaces to 72 spaces. 3, to eliminate the buffered yard requirement along the north property line in lieu of providing the required 30-foot buffered yard. And 4, to allow parking within the no parking setback. The 1.801 acre tract is located just north of Sagamore Parkway West at 3504 Morehouse Road, Wabash 1, Northwest 235, continued by petitioner from the March 27th ABZA meeting hearing. First continuance.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please. John?
Great. John Burns. Yeah, as you identified the site, we're just north of Sagamore Parkway on Morehouse Road, just north of its intersection with Cowbearer Road. Just to the south of this is the gas station, Tippecanoe Memory Gardens, or east across Morehouse Road. The building here on site has been in existence since at least the early 60s. Staff research led us to find out it was originally a bowling alley. At the time when this was built, the 30-foot requirement on the north side of the property that they're asking to vary was not a rule at that time. So the way the building was constructed was conforming, as far as we know, back at that time in the late 60s. What's really spurring this request was the reconfiguration of roundabout installation of Morehouse and Calbarrow Road, which is just to the bottom right of the screen. Part of that project involved a purchase of a part of this property, and what we see out here on the aerial is the current property line after the purchase of right-of-way. So there are 18 parking spaces there that are now in newly acquired right-of-way. Petitioner is trying to recoup some of those lost parking spaces by reorganizing the parking lot. And that would include parking in the 5-foot no parking setback on both the east, south, and west sides of the property. Let me go to the site plan here. We can see here that all these spaces along Morehouse are going away. There are 3 parking spaces along the Morehouse frontage, but they're parallel parking. Part of the reason for the 5-foot no parking setback along property lines is to prevent vehicles from hanging over onto adjacent property or a sidewalk. In this case, because they're parked parallel to that Morehouse frontage, it's not much of a concern. The same is true on the southern property line. The parking has always been parallel parking, but it's been within that setback. The big thing about this project is that the expansion of the daycare is really what's happening. The purchase of right-of-way, reducing the parking, still keeps the site conforming in the context of the ordinance. However, the expansion in the northwest part of the property of the daycare is really what's driving this. The 30-foot setback, 30-foot setback from the north property line would need to be abided by this addition there, but they're proposing a 12-foot setback to keep it in line with, closer in line to the existing building. In lieu of the required buffer yard in that area, petitioner has maintained a fence between the residences to the north and this property. So that's functioned somewhat as a buffer yard when none had been required. It was something they put up over time. The reorganization of parking makes sense to staff, and we can support that. Even the 5-foot no parking setback, we were okay with that. We were able to support it in the tests until we came to the test about is anything unusual about this lot in regard to its shape, size, or topography. So it failed that test, so we could not recommend approval of any 4 of the variances. It seems to us that maybe the site is just being expanded beyond its capabilities of supporting the parking. So staff has recommended against the 4 requests.
Thank you. Petitioner or petitioner's representative.
Good evening, Kevin Riley, attorney with RTS Law, 250 Main Street, Lafayette, representing the petitioner. Just to provide you with a little bit more information about the project before I get into the specific reasons we think that the variances should be granted. So the church operates the daycare. The highest number of employees on site at any one time would be 38 to 40 employees, and that's relevant because that's how part of the parking count is determined. In order to qualify and participate as an unlicensed registered child care ministry in the Indiana Family and Social Services Administration's Child Care and Development Fund, which that fund allows low-income families the use of a state voucher funds at this facility. And to participate in the voluntary certification program, we have to have a safe and enclosed playground. So as a result, that is one of the issues here is we have a playground approximately 2,624 square feet in size, and obviously that takes up parking spaces and also requires or also can result in setback issues. I did want to point out the photos. You all have those? Okay, I think it's fair to say, and staff can correct me if they disagree, but we did submit photos to staff to be displayed tonight, taken over the course, peak times over the course of 2 days. And those photos of the site all show that there is plenty of vacant parking currently located on the site. Is that an accurate?
Yes, all of the pictures, and I do apologize. I believe I dropped the ball there. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we were in agreement on that.
Yes.
So, that goes as to the need, or applies to the need for parking. So as for the reasons why we think these variances should be granted, we agree with staff that the variances are not injurious to health, safety, or general welfare of the community. We agree with the staff that the granting of the variances will not have a substantially adverse impact on adjacent property. We agree with staff that the variances provide the minimum relief necessary to alleviate any hardship. Where we disagree in a couple of areas, first of all, we don't think that this is a situation common to other properties in similar areas. First of all, as mentioned, we lost about 0.196 acres to a taking by the county, which resulted in a loss of 19 parking spaces. We are adding to an existing building as opposed to developing a vacant lot where we can comply with setbacks in an easier manner. I think most importantly, the variances will benefit the community at large and not just the property owner. And what I mean by that is at the State of the County Cities this year, which I attended and maybe several of you did, I heard both mayors and a county commissioner talk about the critical need for childcare in this county. That is a countywide issue. And these variances are going to allow for the expansion of childcare, the addition of childcare to a community that is in dire need of that. So we think that makes this a unique situation as well. To evidence that need, the daycare currently has 26 kids on a waiting list. Over the past 3 months, they've received 82 inquiries about spaces available in their childcare program. Several of those people are not on the waiting list because they weren't willing to pay to be on the waiting list, but I think that's certainly indicative of a need in this community. Another reason this site's unusual or uncommon is you've got a dual-use site. You've got a church and a daycare. Not every site in GB is a dual-use site. And then, as I mentioned, we're losing roughly 2,600 square feet to a playground. That's not common to every property. We do agree with the staff that the parking variances and the parking setback variance are not self-imposed, but we disagree with the staff regarding the side setback and the buffer yard variance, and they're finding that those are self-imposed. So, first of all, as mentioned, the existing building doesn't comply with the setback requirement of the ordinance. If the variance is granted, that will bring the building into compliance. Additionally, the primary reason that the addition is being located where it is because it will attach to an existing corridor. So that allows for a more appropriate, more convenient flow. It also helps to avoid eliminating classroom space that might have to be changed into a hallway or a corridor. So the reason for that location is we're taking advantage of an existing corridor. So the bottom line here is that you've got a petitioner who is already providing childcare at this site. They are doing it on an award-winning basis. They were voted best of the Wabash this year. And they want to continue to provide that service. They want to expand that service in a community that needs it. But in order to do that, we need permission to forego a buffer yard. That's never existed. We need permission to locate the expansion closer to the property line than what the ordinance currently permits, but still farther away from the property line than where the current building sits. We need a reduction of 9 parking spaces, and based on the photos, you can see we've got plenty of parking. And then we need the right to park in the no parking setback because of the taking. All of these variances, I said, they serve the common good of this community, and we don't see any compelling reason to deny those requests, and we request your approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Hearing none. Questions, comments from the board? Go ahead, Gary.
I think they made a good point that this doesn't seem to be injurious to any neighbors or the general welfare, and I think granting them will allow that project to expand and serve the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? We have 4 ballots.
Variance 1 shows all votes in favor, no votes opposed. Variance 2 shows all votes in favor, no votes opposed. Variance 3 shows all votes in favor, no votes opposed. And Variance 4 shows all votes in favor, no votes opposed.
All 4 variances have been approved, and we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear together and vote on separately BZA 2148, Lisa and Verlin Fast. Petitioners and owners are requesting the following variances for an agricultural rental hall in an A zone. 1, to allow brief outdoor ceremonial or processional music, and 3, to reduce the setback to 433 feet instead of the required 1,000 feet from the primary use building to the nearest off-site dwelling. The 10.8865 acre tract is located at 5074 East, 550 South, Sheffield 19, Northwest 22-3. Request amended on April 19th, 2024. And BZA 2145, Lisa and Verlin Fast, petitioners and owners are requesting a second expansion to a previously approved and expanded special exception, BZA 1984 and BZA 2071, to increase the outdoor ceremony area and to add a footbridge over the pond, employee parking, and a privacy fence on the north side of the parking lot, and other possible future improvements as listed on the petition. The A-zoned property is located at 5074 East, 550 South, Sheffield 19, Northwest 22-3.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please. Amanda?
Thank you. Amanda Esposito, Area Plan Staff. I will be presenting both of these cases together, but the variances must be voted on first. Only if variance number 3 for a 433-foot setback is granted, approval can the special exception be voted on. If it is denied, the special exception cannot be voted on, and the petitioner's previously approved special exception, BZA 2071, would remain in effect. This 10.89 acre property is located south and slightly east of Lafayette, about a mile west of US 52. Most of the surrounding properties are zoned agriculturally, with I-3 zoning about a half mile to the northwest. This area is used agriculturally and for single-family dwellings. On site, there are 2 single-family dwellings, one belonging to the petitioners, and the other newly built home belongs to the petitioner's son. Besides the event venue, the site also houses a pair of outbuildings used privately by the petitioner, a retention pond, and a large graveled parking lot. This agricultural rental hall first came before the board in May of 2018, BZA 1984. It passed with a vote of 5-2, with commitments and conditions. An outdoor expansion by petitioners spurred a second appearance before the board in February of 2022, BZA 2071, which also allowed petitioners to add storage, a caterer kitchen, additional restroom facilities, a vestibule, and legitimize the outdoor patio space that had been added. This was approved by a vote of 5-1. Petitioners committed to continued compliance with the previously recorded commitment, which restricted any amplified music or other sound system outside of the rental hall, as well as limiting the number of attendees to 300 people. Petitioners are back before the board this evening due to another outdoor expansion, which needs to be legitimized with an expansion to the previously approved special exception. The petitioners installed a footbridge with LED lighting over their small retention pond on the property. The Tippecanoe County Administrative Officer determined this was an expansion beyond what their special exception approval allowed. Before any expansion may be voted on, however, the property must show that it meets current UZO requirements, which were amended since the previous special exception was approved in 2022. Additional restrictions were added for any ag rental halls, including hours of operation, outdoor amplified music, buffering, max capacity, and a separation between the hall and nearest off-site dwelling. For gathering acres to be expanded by a special exception, they must either meet those requirements or gain a variance for them. In conversations with the petitioners, staff recommended they include any possible future ideas or expansions they may want so they could expand in the future without needing to come before the board yet again. The petitioners' original variance requests would have allowed them to provide brief outdoor amplified music as the ordinance permits, as well as having an amplified sound system, including a microphone for an efficient, expanding the hours of operation to 7 a.m. to midnight every day, and a setback of 350 feet to the nearest off-site dwelling. When staff's recommendation was published, the petitioners opted to change their request to what we are discussing this evening, allowing brief outdoor ceremonial or processional music, which is exactly what the ordinance allows, but a previous commitment by petitioners had prohibited that. And reducing the setback to 433 feet to the nearest off-site dwelling. 350 was an inaccurate measurement, so this was merely a corrective action. Allowing outdoor music, as the ordinance states, is supportable by staff, and we recommend approval of this variance. Number 1. Removing the expanded hours means the petitioner must abide by their current hours of operation, which are 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and 9 a.m. to midnight Friday through Sunday. Regarding the setback, the business was already in operation when this requirement took effect, meaning the business is grandfathered or legally nonconforming. It is only petitioner's desire to expand the business which triggers the need to comply with this standard. Staff feels that enough complaints exist to show that the business is injurious to the community and is affecting adjacent neighbors in an adverse manner due to its proximity. For that reason, we are recommending denial of variance number 3. Staff has received numerous complaints regarding Gathering Acres Event Center, as well as had numerous conversations with several of the neighbors. Through these, we have been made aware of actions taken by both neighbors and petitioners. Zoning complaints are the first step in enforcement, which is administered through our office. Since the BZA is hearing these variances in the special exception tonight, the complaints that we have received are considered on hold. Once a final decision has been made by the BZA, our office will reopen those complaints to determine if action is necessary in the form of investigation and violation notification. Staff would also like to acknowledge that several lawsuits are ongoing, having yet to reach their conclusions. The special exception expansion proposes legitimizing a footbridge with LED lighting, which was already placed by the petitioner over the retention pond, as well as adding a secondary ceremony site near the footbridge of approximately 35 by 50 feet, a walking trail around the pond, 5 employee parking spaces, a fence along the north side of the parking lot to meet the ordinance required buffer, and to allow guests at the venue to take photos on any location within the property. Staff believes that all of these requests are supportable as they would not be detrimental to the area. The UZO definition of an egg rental hall is an establishment where private parties, weddings, and/or receptions limited to attendance by invitation or reservation are held. Additionally, hosting public events open to the public without the requirement of an invitation or reservation, at which entertainment is provided as the main attraction, may also be part of such business. The definition continues that such a rental hall may only host such public events up to 4 times per calendar year. The 300 max capacity of the hall also includes those 4 public events allowed per year. One upcoming event, known as the Spring Fling Flea Market, is advertised as having up to 70-plus vendors, with no mention of needing a ticket. Staff wanted to mention this tonight because we are concerned that a flea market could easily exceed the allowable number of people on site without having the benefit of selling a set number of tickets. But perhaps the petitioner could provide a little bit more clarification on how those public events are regulated. Staff is recommending approval of the special exception. If it is approved, the previously recorded commitments would need to be amended. If it is not approved, the most recent special exception and approved site plan would remain in effect from BZA 2071. The footbridge would also need to be removed. So to recap, staff is recommending approval of variance number 1, denial of variance number 3, and approval of the special exception. Before I finish up, the petitioner mentioned that since there are 2 cases they are addressing at one time, they would like to use more than 5 minutes to present that with the board's approval. So if there are any other questions about the case or procedurally, I'm happy to answer any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Petitioner or petitioner's representative.
Oh, great, thank you. All right. Good evening. My name is Nicholas Fast. Reside at 5062 East 550 South, next to Gathering Acres here. I'd like to begin by going through each of the variance requests with a little bit more detail, comment on a few points from the staff, and as time allows, go through some of the special exception items. So I'll just get started. Regarding variance request number 1, we had originally sought to allow brief ceremonial music and a microphone and sound system for an officiant, all of which were related to the quiet happenings of a wedding ceremony. But upon learning that the staff and a minority of neighbors' opinions was not favorable to such a request, we promptly amended our request to simply ask for the use of brief ceremonial or processional music, just as UZO 41118 allows. So I just want to be very clear that that part is something that the staff approves, that all we're referring to here is simply allowing music for a bride to walk down an aisle, quiet music, something that's certainly not disrupting during a wedding ceremony. And if you've ever been to a wedding, it's a pretty crucial part of having a successful wedding, having some quiet music as the bride comes down. So approving this request would be paramount to the venue's continued success. And we believe that would certainly not be injurious to anyone, certainly not the community. Regarding variance request number 2, about the hours, this one was completely withdrawn. We understand that the request to expand the hours, while it was originally intended to accommodate the types of events we host on weekdays, which are professional seminars, a lot of events for Purdue and other corporate gatherings, quiet events, right? These were not viewed favorably. They were not an absolute deal breaker, and in good faith, we just rescinded that request. It wasn't crucial to our continued operation, so we removed it to ensure that we're not requesting anything that is disrupting anyone. For variance request number 3, the setback. So we were previously approved for all setbacks at the time of original construction back in 2018. But as you know, part of UZO 41118, which I think was February of 2023, changed that setback requirement to 1,000 feet. You know, this is a situation where we can't pick up the venue and move it a little bit to still comply with that setback requirement. So just wanted to note that we've been in business for years before this new requirement came into effect. So we'd simply ask that just because there's new regulations for agricultural rental halls, we still be allowed to be approved on this variance that we were originally in compliance about. I have just a few more points regarding the variance, and I'm not sure where I'm at with time or if you're amenable to a little bit more than 5 minutes. But while the staff had denied the variance request, I would respectfully challenge this opinion. I think a lot of it has been related to complaints and neighbors' opinions. I think there's 3 points that I'd begin with. One, today we're talking about a very minor change to the operation of Gathering Acres, which is in its simplest form to allow an outdoor wedding. This is something that there was unanimous agreement about, that having an outdoor wedding with ceremonial music is not disruptive. So ultimately, this is kind of the prerequisite to allowing what we think a very simple and not disruptive request. 2, there is similar opposition, I imagine, based on letters received and who's in attendance, that there's similar opposition to previous special exceptions, and that is technically a minority of the adjoining properties who are in, having a loud opinion, certainly. 3, and this part I think is important in Gathering Acres and our family, our families have more than dispensed our responsibilities and more in efforts to retain peace and simply not be disruptive to neighbors, despite what will surely be claimed today. And I have 3 points about this, and then I'd like to maybe comment on the special exception and then close. The first would be at our most recent time here for the original special exception, there's concern about headlights entering neighbors' windows through our parking lot. Despite not technically being required to do something about that, we, within a month, constructed a 12-foot privacy fence that, I have photos here, that is 300 feet long and, wow, it's moving on its own here. Or maybe you're doing it, thank you. There we go. So this is the 12-foot fence. It all but stopped headlights from leaving the parking lot. Neighbors had also mentioned that guests would turn around in their driveways. Our solution was enhance the entryway so our place can't be missed. There's some approved signage, some lights. We're there, both our families, all the time. We don't see cars driving where they shouldn't be, so that seems all but solved. And lastly, the biggest thing is sound disruption. Here's a few things that we've physically done here that, to prevent sound, the fence helps a good amount. I mean, one of the conditions, actually as part of UZO, is to have a tree line. So we have a tree line and a fence, but we've additionally, as part of the previous special exception, added onto the building another layer of walls, and isolation of sound does a lot. We have 11-inch thick walls now, fully insulated. We have installed over 400-pound commercial-grade vestibule doors that are extremely effective at stopping sound. We have sound-absorbing panels throughout the venue. We have a permanent decibel reader that is attached in the venue that's seen by DJ at all times to ensure that we're not being too loud. And if you're familiar with soundproofing techniques, and mass and decoupling of a wall are really great ways to stop sound. So we've done our homework there and have made, I believe, very effective efforts to stop any sound disruption. Do I have much time left here? Okay, thank you. I'll end quickly here. I did want to mention that we did have regular contact with neighbors throughout the summer. I had, upon moving into my new house here, had gone and tried to be a good neighbor, and here's my phone number. If you ever have any issue, contact me. And that was great for some time. They would take me up on that offer and say, hey, it's a little loud. I'd think, okay, we'll turn down the music, and they'd say, great, it's peaceful. So that was working, and we conducted a little experiment just yesterday, actually, when the staff had visited the venue, just to cover the sound issue. While they were taking these photos, we had very loud music playing in the venue, over 100 decibels, 102. It was hardly heard while standing outside the venue. So I think we have a lot of ways that we can show that we're not making a lot of sound, and I'd be happy to answer questions about that. But lastly, I would just further the point that we will work to any end with neighbors to ensure that there is not sound that is unacceptable. And our only request today is to allow brief ceremonial music, which is something everyone agrees on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we may have questions for you later.
Sure.
Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Come on up, please.
Hello, my name's Brian Kernahan. I run a DJ business called DJ Indiana.
Address, please.
And, pardon me?
Address, please. Your address.
Address, 117 South Brookfield Drive, Lafayette, Indiana. Is that all you need? Okay. Yeah, I met Lisa and Berlin probably right in the middle of COVID about 4 years ago, and just introduced myself, and they were able to get me out there to DJ some weddings. And I guess I'm a little tall for that. I'll just hold it here. As a DJ at most of these weddings these days, we do both the ceremony music and the reception music. I mean, it's rare that people have their weddings in a church anymore. And a wedding venue that cannot allow for ceremony music would be devastating to their business, in my opinion, because there's so many people that want to do the ceremony and the wedding at the same place. And they like to do their ceremonies outdoors instead of inside with the reception going at the same time, because they have to move tables. It's a little disruptive to have to reconfigure all the tables and chairs after the ceremony's done. So most of my clients prefer to have their weddings outdoors or in a different room. Experience-wise, I can tell you that as a DJ, I start off with about 30 minutes of background guest seating music at an extremely low volume because people will take their seats, and at the most, they're going to maybe want to whisper to each other, but the music's got to be low enough in order for them to actually whisper to each other when you're waiting for a ceremony to start. So that's why the pre-ceremony music is so low in volume. Then when it's time for the actual processional, the volume is bumped up just enough, just so that it sounds right for a typical wedding ceremony. It's not going to be loud enough to where people can't talk to each other or anything like that. It's at a very low volume. In fact, I couldn't even turn it up to a high volume even if I wanted to, because I typically will run my sound system off of a little 12-volt AC/DC battery pack. And if I turned it up too loud, it would shut off. So there's no way that would ever happen for me. So at the most, we play 3 processional songs at that very same volume. Then the officiant takes over. The microphone isn't going to be any louder than the music was playing. And then when the officiant's all done, they're pronounced husband and wife, I will play a recessional song that would be at about the same volume that the processional songs were. And that's pretty much about it as far as that is concerned. Now, as far as the inside, when I've DJ'd at various venues over the years, probably, I don't know, I've probably been about 200 different venues over the years. Gathering Acres is the only venue I've ever been to that has a decibel meter for the DJ. I've never had to do anything with that before. But that is a good idea because as a DJ, we've got the speakers out in front of us, so the music's going to be louder out where the dance floor is as opposed to where I'm standing. So at times, as a DJ, I could possibly start playing it a little too loud for the wedding itself, and that decibel meter actually helps me out a lot because I could think, oh, the music's not that loud, but then I step out there, I'm like, oh, at 90 decibels, yeah, it's plenty loud. It's great for dancing, no problem there. Clients are happy, and I never have clients come up and say, turn it up louder at a wedding reception. I might at a bar, if people are drinking a lot, yeah, but not at a wedding. Just doesn't happen. So, other than that, does anybody have any questions for me?
We may have some later.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sir, if you could please, sir, if you could go sign in.
You can sign in over here.
Oh, I didn't know that, sorry. I've never been to a court in my life. I think I need to grow. Okay. My name is Rob Outhouse. My address is 2118 East 430 South. I'm a wedding officiant. I have done 63 weddings in my time of officiating weddings, but I've done several wedding ceremonies at Gathering Acres, both inside and out. Of the weddings that I do, probably 50-50 of those are indoor-outdoor weddings. Most of the time, almost all of the outdoor weddings have music for the processional and also for myself to wear a mic. I do some public speaking, so I do speak loud sometimes, so I have been able to get by doing a ceremony outdoors there without a microphone. But for those folks that are hard of hearing, which my wife accuses me of a lot, it's hard to hear sometimes if they are not able to have an amplified voice on a microphone. But Lisa and Verlin, I first met them in 2020 as well, during COVID actually, and the first wedding I did out there was actually in November of 20. But they are the greatest hosts that an officiant in a wedding party could ever ask for. And what I mean is that they are very considerate to the wedding party and the families, and they're also considerate to their neighbors as well. And again, this is what I see. They are hands-on and involved in every aspect of the ceremony and their beautiful venue. For the outdoor weddings that I have performed, it would have been great to have outdoor music to be able to bring, I'm going to be PC and say, the spouse that would come down. because I have done weddings where they are spouses getting married, and I want to be considerate to that. But these weddings are always performed during the afternoon, and they're not over the top loud whatsoever. The outdoor volume is set to be heard for the wedding party and their guests, but by no means is it ever blaring. The volume for an officiant is adequate, but sometimes there are older generation folks, as I mentioned, that may have a hard time of hearing it. On more than one occasion that I have done an outdoor wedding at Gathering Acres, during a wedding ceremony, somebody's mowing their grass. And I guarantee that the mower itself is louder than 100 decibel level. And I mention 100 decibel level because Gathering Acres holds themselves to that threshold inside every single time I've done a wedding out there. I too have seen the decibel meter. Not that I'm ever going to speak loud enough as the officiant to peak that at 100 decibels, but at any time, I've never seen it above 95. And that was before the improvements that were made to the soundproofing of the walls themselves. Most couples at any venue that I've been to, I've done 4 venues in Tippecanoe County. Gathering Acres is the only one that is not allowed to have music outside. And when most couples are paying over $10,000 to have a wedding at a venue now, and I question the intent of some of the neighbors that disrupt the ceremonies when they're there, because even a ceremony that I've done there, I've heard the train whistle, or I've heard the air horn going off, and it's very disruptive to the ceremony, and I just don't know the intent of the neighbors trying to disrupt any ceremony there or anywhere else. I know that Gathering Acres would not be a business if all the required variances were not met before they opened for their first booking. Neighbors had the chance for their voices to be heard in favor of or against Gathering Acres before they opened for business. During the reception celebrations, Lisa and Verlin have that decibel meter in the main hall. They make sure that the volume level inside of the building is never above 95 decibels. Not easy sometimes, as the tall gentleman just mentioned. As a DJ, it's kind of getting the mood, kind of get going here. But they let all parties know that book their place, that they do not allow the music to be played over 100 decibels. Lisa and Verlin are just 2 folks that have a beautiful location for a venue, have played by the rules, and they are just asking the neighbors to give respect to them and their guests as they celebrate within the guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition.
I can't even see over it. Allie Sheets, I live on 500 South. I am speaking as an employee, but also a neighbor. I'm almost exactly a mile from them. And I will say Lisa and Verlin absolutely are rule followers to the T. As an employee, we have to watch the sound. We know that if somebody had to run over to the house, that midnight hits, we are sprinting to the DJ. It's time to cut. Mid-song, mid-whatever, they are demanded to shut it off. They do not go past that timeline. Same thing with the sound volume. If we as bartenders feel like the volume is too loud, they want us to go check it, go verify, go make sure that the DJ is following the rules. They do everything they can to limit the sound. But as he just spoke, I mean, we've attended outdoor weddings where there are four-wheelers, mowers, dirt bikes, train horns, outrageous amounts of music ruining couples' day. Their videographers are trying to mute the sound. They've created horrible experiences for some of these couples, and it's really awful. When Lisa and Verlin do nothing but pour their heart and soul into trying to create beautiful memories for these families. I can hear some of that noise from the train horns and things at my house a mile down the road. I have some on recording, my husband and I have. I mean, I can't even explain to you how awful it is. But I can't say enough good things about what Lisa and Verlin have done to try and make peace, to try and follow the rules, to try and make it better and improve on every aspect they possibly could as far as the requests that they've been given. I tell people all the time about the venue, and it's funny because I run into people all the time that don't know anything about it. And to me, that speaks volumes. If it's a problem property, you know about it if you live in the community. The only way you don't know about it is because it's never a problem. So yeah, I just hope you guys really take into consideration the fact that you guys all probably have children and they're going to want processional music at their wedding. It's a simple, quiet thing that really just makes the moment. And that's all it is. It's just music for a moment. So, thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition. You've had your time. Okay, speaking in opposition.
Hi, we're Tim and Kathy Lewis, live directly across the road at 5227 East, 550 South. And I'm totally against the setback. There's that building was put up originally as a storage building. It wasn't put up as a business, and that went through, and then they did change the law and set which they're within that, but there's no reason to have a smaller setback. That I don't see the point in that. Their music is still out of hand in our house, sitting in our house. It keeps us awake very much at night. So they're within their guidelines, I guess, on that. The wall, the privacy fence has helped, I guess, a little maybe, but it's still there. It's loud. And we don't need any more by having outside sounds.
And it seemed like the later it goes, the louder the music gets. So when
Lot
we're
of
in,
bass.
Yeah, bass. And when we're inside watching TV, we can just hear it, you know. And we've
You can feel it. even.
and we've called Lisa before, and she tells us to turn our TV up. That was her response. So it's like we still get. It's just like you're sitting at a stoplight and you have a car pull up. You hear that annoying bass, that beat. That's what we get over there at our house. All of us do. And on the other subject is, it just seems like there's a pattern there, like the bridge. Why ask tonight to build a bridge when you've already built the bridge? You know, these kind of things, it's almost like they do stuff and then they come and ask for forgiveness, permission, or whatever. The awning on the back of the barn, I'm not for sure how that all came about. But there are tables back there, and it
It's
seems...
been there for quite some time.
Yeah, and it seems that there's an open window in the back of the barn, and I thought they weren't supposed to serve alcoholic beverages outside. I thought it was a venue that all alcoholic beverages were supposed to be inside the building.
There's
And
a sliding
door.
to open that up to them.
And this barn wants to be for the wedding, so why can't we just keep it that they were all supposed to be indoors? The biggest problems, it seems like, between all of us is they're wanting to have all these weddings outdoors and having the music and stuff, the amplified music, the microphone, all that stuff. It just is going to create more problems in the neighborhood. So it's like, why don't you just be happy, be glad that you've got this wedding barn and have your weddings inside? That would solve all the problems, I think, in the neighborhood, the commotion. We never know when they're having an outdoor wedding. So why can't we have our birthday parties? Why can't we ride our dirt
They
bikes?
called the sheriff on us. The neighbors had a birthday party for a 3-year-old, and the kids was out riding their dirt bikes, and, you know,
And then
we didn't know we don't know when
We
they're
don't know
having
they're
it.
overdoing that.
We're not gonna stop our doings for what their schedule is.
I mean, that's our private property, so I've lived there since 1976. All that land over there is my grandparents' land, and I live in my grandmother's house that we redid. So it's like, it all started one night when Lisa came over and told us that we couldn't ride our four-wheelers the next day because they're having an outdoor wedding. And it's like, you should have thought of that before you put this close to our homes. We're not going to stop our life doing what we normally do. We don't know when there's an outdoor wedding. So why should we be penalized, or why should we be bullied because maybe we made too much noise? That's just normal for us.
And the air horns have stopped. It's under court order.
Yeah, we do
And
not
they
blow the
haven't
air
been
horns,
going
but
on.
we're going to go on with our life. If we want to have a birthday party, we will. If we want to ride our four-wheelers or dirt bikes, whatever, we're going to do that. We're not going to change our lives. They've got a business over there, and they do have rules they're going to have to go by. But this is our private property over here. So that's our feelings with that. And the concrete pad, if they want to put that concrete pad out there with permanent seating, that's just encouraging more outdoor weddings. So I believe to the problem to be solved was, let's just have the weddings indoors. Then we don't have to worry about anything. We don't see their schedule. You know, we don't see nothing. So how are we supposed to know? And another thing that was on there that I was wondering about, where it says other possible future improvement. It's like, what does that mean? Because it seems like their pattern is they'll do something and then they got to come down and ask the county if that's okay. So that's it for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Hi. Heather and Lee Elser, 5203 East, 550 South. Our biggest problem is it seems like Gathering Acres does not want to follow the rules, and we can't live our life. We feel like we're being bullied. If we're, like she said, having a birthday party and they were having an outdoor wedding, we couldn't do that. I know the amplified music and microphone was removed from this request tonight, but Saturday, April 13th, they did have an outdoor wedding with music and a microphone.
In the past, it seems like they have no repercussions for their actions. Their own website even stated outdoor audio equipment all the way up until they received the non-official written warning. Then it got removed. But that didn't stop them from doing what they wanted to do anyway. I think the biggest problem here is our close proximity to them. Granted, yes, we can't change that now, but that's why the setback has moved to 1,000 feet, because we are disrupting each other's lives as much as we are. Now, I don't understand, we're what, 50%, 57% closer than what we should be? We're right around 430 feet. They should be 1,000 feet. So all future expansions is only going to make things worse. They need to accept what they have and go with it.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Susan Pfeiffer, and I'm here representing myself and my mother, Ruth Bush, 3204 East, 600 South, Lafayette, Indiana. First, let me say that I'm responding to this on behalf of my mother, who has property that abuts or is adjacent to the Gathering Acres property. I just have to say that the behavior of Gathering Acres and the neighboring homeowners is right now out of control. Suits have been filed by both sides. Feelings are strong and feelings have been hurt. I ask the zoning board members, do you want to reward bad behavior or do you want to prevent it? And BZA 2148 has been amended to read to allow brief outdoor ceremonial or processional music. And I think this has been demonstrated tonight, what I'm going to say. Using the word brief will only add to the contention that is displayed now. One side is going to understand brief as being 5 minutes. The other side is going to understand, such as the man that spoke ahead of us, that he plays 3 songs and then you have the bride walking down the aisle music, and you have the music as they leave. They may think 30 minutes is brief. So I'm asking, this is something that you can actually control, change, do, is to define what brief means. The zoning board can do that. And I think that would help in that situation. I also understand that the setback requirement is 1,000 feet. But this requirement was changed after Gathering Acres was in operation. I support keeping the properties as far away from each other as you possibly can, whatever that may be, based on the rules and regulations that are in place. And I think that might help as well. BZA 2145 was amended, and it now shows the footbridge was already constructed. Again, this awards bad behavior. It appears that there's a lot going on in this 10-acre-plus site. You have 2 large homes, the venue, the garages, the sheds, the ponds, and the list goes on. So where do the people fit in? And I, again, understand that there's a limit of 300. So one of my other concerns for the board, that's something you also have control over, is how they handle complaints. So let's just take a scenario that there's 400 people at an event over the weekend, and someone needs to ensure that this event is safe because you're only allowed 300 people and now we've got 400. Don't know how they got there, but they're there. They're overcrowded. As I understand it, a person has to file a complaint online. And if this is over the weekend, which a lot of the events are, there's no one there to hear the complaint in a timely manner. So I'm just asking if perhaps in this case, you can set up something where someone is assigned on call so that these things can be addressed immediately and cleared up so it doesn't boil over into another situation. Putting somebody directly online or in charge of that event when they're happening, if there's complaints, and that's something that you control, as I understand that the amount of people that are there, maybe that would help with this situation. I think some of these changes, if you can define what brief is, will help with one, and setting up some kind of a better complaint system that is immediate. I mean, we all have kids, and you know if they do something out of character, they need disciplined, we don't wait 2 days to tell them that that's wrong. And in this case, from what I see the behaviors of both sides, they need immediate dealings with what's going on. Being a good neighbor is really hard work, and I've heard some of the things that they've been saying up here, but I expect the rules, the regulations, and the zoning laws to be abided by, but I also expect them to be enforced. And as I understand it, that's what the zoning board does. So without enforcement, things are going to continue to deteriorate, and the neighborhood will be changed, but not for the better. I also had something I wanted to say, and I didn't feel that it was something that could be addressed by the zoning board, but I hear other people talking about neighbors and how they should be and how they should treat each other. So I just wanted to say a couple of things that I changed my talk. Okay. I think that a good neighbor makes sure that no one leaves their property driving under the influence of alcohol. A good neighbor respects that sound carries. A good neighbor will share sweet corn from their field, not fly drones over their neighbors' houses. A good neighbor will offer to help someone if they're in need and help shovel out driveways, not stand across the road and take pictures of young children playing outside. So there are a lot of issues here that you can't address, and there is contention, and I'm just hoping that the board can do a couple of small things to help reduce that and make this a better environment for everyone. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ma'am, do you get sign in? Speaking in opposition.
Hi, I'm Andy Schweitzer. I live at 5006 South 500 East. So I'm about a half a mile north of Gathering Acres, and I've got no ill will towards their business. They're a former client. I want to be neighborly to them. I don't want to prevent them from doing their business. I've attended a fundraiser there. They did a great job as in the wintertime as inside. They did a wonderful job. Unfortunately, I mean, they should be proud of what they're doing, but unfortunately, what they've built here, this business, the rest of us around them are paying for it. One of the topics that's really not on the board tonight is just increase in traffic that, there was briefly discussion earlier about how before this was all approved, that neighbors would have a chance to talk in opposition. But I don't think any of the neighbors realize the impact that the traffic would have. We've got 3 or 4 tour buses at the same time going 60 mile an hour down a country road. We've got people passing in front of houses, just a lot of things that I never would have predicted. So I would ask that our highway department, or however that works, that they reevaluate intersections, signs, speed limits, lines on roads. It can get unsafe, especially at night with people who aren't familiar with country roads. I'd say that, this sounds like a lot of drama from a neighborhood, and maybe from your perspective, it is just like an argument and people being petty. But really, there's a half that wouldn't even be here talking to you if they were just committed to what they promised as far as the noise. I think it was kind of confusing in the staff's report a little bit, where it said that if we approve this outdoor ceremonial or processional music, that it would eliminate the previously agreed upon recorded stricter commitment. So that sounds kind of scary to me, that the commitment that they can't even live up to, we're going to eliminate it because they can't live up to it. And there was not supposed to be any loud music. They talk about decibel readings. Decibels, you can't measure bass in decibels. You can't, that's not even a thing. So they can rattle your windows and the decibel level can still be low. They talked about in some of the previous discussions how they measure it at the corner of the property. They measure the sound from their bedroom. All these things sound great. Unfortunately, I live half a mile away, and there are times where I can hear it word for word. It's people doing karaoke, they're doing whatever. And I'm wondering, okay, so I'm not all up in their business. I'm not watching what's going on down there, but these are supposed to be indoor events, and I can hear it a half a mile away. That just seems crazy to me. I think that, that the staff even made a comment that they're aware of the contentious and bad faith actions on both sides. Kind of makes it sound like it's an argument of all the rest of the neighbors versus this particular business. But there's also been things like Brent Tyke talked about how they started as friends. Even the closest neighbor even had their family wedding there, and now they're not friends. And why is that? It's that they're not living up to this noise deal. And now they want to increase outdoor area, which potentially could increase noise. Just kind of curious how many times the rest of us neighbors have to come up here and voice our opinion in opposition. How many other BZA meetings do we attend? How many times do we call the sheriff or the building commissioner? How many chances do we give them to honor their commitment that there is no noise? If you folks lived where we live, you would vote no. If this event center was in the city, there would be even complaints, maybe even more. I request that no additional variances or appeals until maybe they establish a track record of following up with the commitment that they already had by not disturbing the peace. Thanks.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
I only got one question for the board. I farm, Gordon Lumley, 5005 South 500 East, Lafayette. This is my question. I farm, I raise cattle, and I bale hay right on the north side of their property. So I don't know anybody in here that farms. I know you know about it, Carrie. But if I've got a 4-day window to cut hay and bale hay, and they've got an outdoor wedding, does that mean I'm going to get arrested by the sheriff for making noise during their wedding? That's the question I'm asking you. And if I'm working ground or planting corn or harvesting corn, and they got an outdoor wedding, and all the dust and chaff go over, and the bride gets in her hair, am I going to get in trouble for that when I live in an ag community? Them are my questions.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition. Last call for speaking in opposition. A chance to rebut?
Thank you. I think that there's a good deal of confusion about what we're specifically requesting with comments about increased outdoor area and amplified music and things like that. Just to be clear, we're only talking about the quiet happenings of a wedding. As you can see in that photo way out in the field, that's when, think violins playing, but like a small speaker. So when I think about sound disruption, approving the request today, each of the opposing points on that topic don't really apply. What we're asking is not something that's going to expand disruption for sound. There's been a few other points. I mean, most recently noted that there's loud karaoke happening outside. We've never had any type of karaoke event. That was actually the neighboring property with the birthday party they're referring to. So I just want to be clear that we're not hosting anything outside that has amplified music. That was a different property. There's clearly a lot of contention between neighbors, and I just want to make clear that we have put forth every effort to be available, and we still are available. We can certainly turn down the bass in any moment where it seems too much, but I just want to say a couple things. I live closest to the venue than anyone. There's no barrier between the venue and the window of my 1-year-old and 5-year-old son, and we just don't hear it. So the claims of loud music are either grossly exaggerated or something else. I don't quite understand that. And regarding the other contention, this ultimately started with them choosing to communicate differently with us. We were happy to continue having peaceful exchanges, but one day this summer they started sounding loud train horns. I mean, a train horn, like 150 decibels. It would measure 100 decibels at my door. It was maddening. I'd happily show a video if it applies, because so much of this does seem to be related to neighborhood relations and sound, but truly maddening. Kids play outside. Wife carries in groceries. They're being, like babies crawling around in the grass, they're being honked at by train horns incessantly for hours. So that is the reason that these comments about civil litigation beginning, there is a harassment case based on that. I don't think many of those details are relevant to this board, other than the fact that we are showing that we're doing everything we can to appease neighbors. We are still willing, despite any lawsuit, to keep music down in every way. We do that without being asked. So I hear their concerns. I wish there was a different response, but unfortunately, I think a lot of what's happening here is there are perfectly reasonable things being opposed, such as music at a wedding ceremony in a small area outside, and I suspect that they're only being opposed out of pure retaliation. That's what neighbors have told me. When I went to ask them, why are their horns honking, they literally told me, it's because we're retaliating. We don't like the venue, so we're just going to honk these horns to get you back. I don't think that behavior should be rewarded by denying this request. And they've specifically said, I quote, "You either shut down this venue or you have to deal with us." So please help us deal with this situation by simply approving a request to have us allow outdoor wedding, brief ceremonial music, 20 minutes. Most weddings you've been to, they're 20-ish minutes, something like that. And on that note, we have no additional plans to be expanding and coming before this board. This is clearly not a great use of everyone's time. We don't seek to continue doing that. So the claims about, when does this end? We just want to be able to have an outdoor wedding because we're a venue that hosts a lot of events and weddings. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I guess I'd like to start out by asking staff what they consider to be brief.
I believe whenever this amendment was created, it was understood that it would include processional music and perhaps a song or two throughout the ceremony.
So not like half an hour. I mean, I was at a lot of the ordinance committee meetings. And
Right.
That's kind of my recollection. It was, so you could play Here Comes the Bride, have the bride walk up the aisle, and maybe
Recessional music as
recessional
well.
music as well.
Right.
I mean, this half hour before, that, I mean, it's your choice of venue.
Correct.
So I am concerned with, some of the outdoor activity and adding that even though we do allow it, but because it is so close to the neighbors, is that really appropriate? And I did hear also that, the DJ was talking about using a mic for officiating, and that has been removed. I mean, that is not in the variance anymore. So there is no mic for officiating if we were to approve this.
Right, our request would not include the use of a microphone.
That is correct.
I guess I'll let somebody else ask questions before I ask some more.
I have some. I have a few questions about violation complaints that were filed, and you mentioned briefly. What is the nature of the complaint? Are they sound-related, traffic-related? Do you recall?
We do have some of the complaints printed out that we can pass around to the board members.
That'd be great. Thank
Okay.
you. So in...
But I believe in summary, you'll find that it is noise-related.
It is
Yeah.
mostly noise-related.
But you'll see the verbatim.
If, so this is for the purposes of clarity, if these requests were to be approved today, what would happen to the complaints? Will it become null and void?
It depends if the nature of the complaint, if it's essentially been addressed by the granting of the variance, then the allegation cannot be proven. Well, it's basically null. So they've made a complaint against something that is essentially permitted. So there would be no zoning violation, so the complaint would be closed.
Okay, thank you.
I follow up on that. If we were to approve variance 1, but the special exception expansion was denied, would the variance take effect? I'm assuming yes, that it might, because we're not, I mean, there's a condition on the special exception.
I believe you are correct that they would still be allowed to have brief outdoor ceremonial and/or processional music. They just could not expand in the terms outlined in the special exception.
And I guess one other thing I would like the petitioner to address, if, I know it was mentioned by staff about the open event, but I think was at a flea market, how you plan to control and limit the number of people on site. Please come up to the mic.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to control the number of people entering the property. I mean, the first idea that we had would be have a clicker. You go into a place that's taking attendance, you go to a public pool, they have a capacity, they click you in, click you out. I mean, that's a pretty simple way of doing it. I think pretty effective. If anyone has another way that, we need to be required to do this a certain way, we're open to that. But I think that would be effective. You could do it at the doors to the venue. If it's something inside, you could do it at the entrance to the venue. If it's anything related to being outside, obviously without any kind of amplified sound being outside. So that would be our first thought on handling that.
Thank you. Another question I have to staff, was one of the original expansion or the original, did we approve that outdoor area?
Yes, the patio that you see on the back end of the barn here, the 30 by 40 foot patio, that was approved in BZA 2071.
That was approved in
Yes, it
BZA
was.
2171.
Yes.
And were there any limitations on outdoor activities as part of that?
No, they retained their existing outdoor ceremony area. This did not increase the capacity at all of the event. It would be assumed that the same 300 people, max 300 people, would be using this space in addition to the existing spaces.
And I guess a question for petitioner, we heard from one of the opponents that you have windows that open, and I guess one of the things with open windows is it lets sound out.
Yeah, so there is a window in the kitchen bar type area. It's always closed unless it's hot in there and there's not music going on, but it's a window. It has the ability to open during the event. When there's music happening, that thing is always closed. I mean, we're certainly not keeping that open and letting sound escape, so. And that goes for all the doors in the building too, obviously. Like, we're very vigilant to get that door closed. That's a huge source of sound loss, so.
You have a question?
Petitioner. So the window does open, but you're saying, because the kitchen gets hot, but you're swearing that when there's music on, regardless of how hot that kitchen is, that window gets shut again because you don't want that music to escape?
I see what you're saying. I think it's fair to say the only time that window is open is as before an event is getting started, right? You're 2, 3 p.m., the bartenders are getting the bar ready for the party to come, and maybe it's hot, maybe they just want the fresh air. That would be the only time that the window would ever be opened. But, I mean, there's air conditioning in there, it's comfortable. That thing is not getting opened while there's music playing. So if there's a way that we can prove or commit to that being closed at all times, because I understand that's a concern. We're certainly not opening that window while there's music happening.
Well,
Can I address it? Because it's kind of a mechanical thing, and I've done everything in that building.
I'll recognize you as part of
Yes,
it.
Verlin Fast, 5074 East 550 South. So the one big air conditioner unit is right above in that area, and there's actually booster fans installed on that unit, so I can flip on that booster fan to cool off that area. And what he's trying to describe here is leading up to an event, a lot of times we'll take the temp down in the building to like 66 degrees, because when you get every 100 people is like 60,000 BTUs. So that way we're ahead of that. And that's what he's talking about, getting that window open maybe before the event or late in the evening, or we'll open it early in the morning to get that temp down where we want to. So then it's an easier job on the HVAC units. Does that kind of answer what? Yes, no?
It responds to it.
Yeah. It's not necessarily open during an event, though. That's no. Because, like I say, we got the booster fans on that HVAC unit.
And I understand, and I appreciate what you guys would have to go up against with that situation. But I guess from a practical standpoint, and a lot of this, because we're not there, I would think that when there's fewer people in there and you're getting ready and you have that AC down to 66 or whatever, that would be when it would be colder. And then when you get like 299, because you wouldn't go over 300, because I know you watch that.
Yeah.
When you get 299 in there, plus the other people in there, plus the DJ monitoring the decibel level, I think it would be hotter then. I don't know. I mean, you have people
Right.
coming and talking about sound, music, traveling and stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you're getting at. That's the moment where, sure, it'd be opportune on a cold evening to open that window. That's not what's happening with all the efforts that we're putting forward to stop sound. That would just be undoing our progress. We have no interest in opening that window. It's primarily there for the purpose of, there's a outdoor, like, time before the ceremony begins, people hanging out on the back patio, they could get soda or something like at the window. It's a window, it'd be a dark corner without that, and it's a window that is able to open.
Outdoor ceremonies. And I get how the wedding party, the bride and groom would want to have that outdoor ceremony. But see, that's the thing is, and especially if we get along to that point and vote on the 30 by 40 pad out there. So it's all supposed to be contained inside. Now, you had that overhang that was approved and you could go out there, but is that going to go ahead and, if it's a paved part there, is it going to go ahead and encourage, it's a wedding, especially a summer wedding. You're all dancing, everybody's having a good time, and then it's like, wow, I want to go out and get a little bit of air. Then are they going to start congregating out there, and then the chance for more noise?
Great question. This is part of the reason why we removed that request for any permanent pad or seating, because of the point is, hey, does that encourage more people to hang out outside? But all we're really referring to with this future ceremony site is for when the bride and groom are, they're saying their IDs, we go out and set up temporary chairs in rows. The plan would be to set up a bunch of chairs between the venue and the pond in that dotted area to have the 15, 20-minute wedding ceremony, and then everyone goes inside for the reception, which is the party with the music inside. So at no point would, the wedding's over, the wedding ceremony is over after those 20 minutes or something. Afterward, all the guests go into the building for the party, the reception, and they stay there. There wouldn't really be, there's no reason for someone to come back out to the wedding site. It'd be kind of like going back to the altar when the party's already started. How it's currently operating is there are chairs out in the field of the currently approved ceremony area. So, the reception starts, the party's going inside. No one's just deciding to leave that party to go out and hang out at the ceremony area.
Do you allow smoking on the site?
Not within, only outdoors, and is it 15 feet? It's the approved, the most that would ever happen.
Well, I guess I'll cut to the chase.
Yeah.
So why would they go back to the paved area? Maybe to have a cigarette?
The patio would be a good place for that, and that's behind the venue. But the ceremony area that we're requesting, I don't think would be the best smoking spot.
And Robert, just to clarify, they removed that request in your addendum. You'll see that the concrete pad was removed.
Yeah, for those same concerns.
No, they were going to add a concrete pad at the existing outdoor ceremony area, but they removed that from their request. So the request was amended to just have a secondary ceremony site, which is what you're seeing by the pond, but no concrete pad.
All right.
Yeah.
And I guess another question too, there were some pictures that were passed around by one of the opponents that showed a lot of people outside. It was definitely not before the wedding. So it seems like you have a lot of activity outside, even if the party is inside. You seem to have a lot of overflow, not necessarily over your 300, but people wanting to be outside, maybe to cool off. They're sitting at the tables. And, how many of the complaints that you're getting are from actually noise from outside as opposed to
Right.
noise from being inside the venue. And I think that may be part of your problem, is that you've got a lot of people outside on nice days on that patio area, and they're
Yeah.
creating a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why you've got the large setback that we have now as opposed to what we had before.
Right, so, thanks. If I had to guess, the picture was probably of the back patio, people gathering back there. You know, I think it's fair to say the primary source of complaint would be the sound from the venue, not the sound of guests talking amongst themselves on the back patio, because that's all that's ever happening. I mean, 20 guests, something like that, would maybe congregate in the back patio during an event. They'd sit around, you know, on the high top tables, and they're chatting. It'd be no different than hanging out in your backyard, right? So I don't. That's certainly a picture. I don't think it's a main theme of any complaint we've ever got. I can't imagine how that's a source of disrupting noise, because there's no music on the back patio. You know, the music is, of course, contained inside the building. And I suppose you have occasionally people walking to and from their cars. But if there's any congregation of people, it's sitting around chatting on the back patio. And I don't think the ceremony site we're talking about would not be a hangout spot. It's a patch of grass in front of the pond, you know, next to the road that's coming into the parking lot. So not where you would be interested in wandering around to hang out or have a smoke.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? We have the 2 ballots for the variance. And we have to wait and see if the last variance passes before we can vote on the special exception.
On variance 1, I showed 2 votes in favor and 5 votes opposed. And on variance 3, I show 2 votes in favor and 5 votes opposed.
both variances are denied, and it's my understanding we cannot vote on the special exception and that it is dismissed. And do we need to take any action on dismissing that?
Defer to the attorney on that. Is that an automatic dismissal, or do they need to just do
Because they can't meet the,
a voice
The
vote
issue.
dismissal?
I think my office has a conflict on this, so I can't really give advice because one of my partners is involved, and I think
Okay.
Eric's pointed that out in the litigation.
I think it wouldn't hurt to make a motion to
Yeah.
dismiss it.
Yeah, just have it on record.
just have it on record. Make a motion, please.
I motion that we dismiss BZA 2145.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments?
Staff
Mary.
has, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Staff has one last comment about the footbridge, just to ensure that it is removed, because that was part of the special exception expansion. So while everybody is still here in the room, I believe that is a conversation that maybe board can have with the petitioner.
Okay. All in favor of dismissing BZA 2145? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. And I'm assuming, Amanda, that you're wanting a time frame for the removal is what you're asking about?
I think that would be acceptable, yeah.
And petitioner, do you have an idea of how long it would take you to remove the bridge?
We would have to drain the entire pond and wait for it to get completely dry for it to be.
So almost like.
If someone could come up to the mic, please.
I can mostly pick up a skid loader in the next couple days and drag that out of there. There was nothing constructed on that bridge. It was moved in place to be constructed. Anyway, I can take care of that.
Okay. I mean, do we want a time frame of a couple months just in case?
When do you think you can get it moved?
I should be able to drag it out of there without draining the pond, so.
3 weeks? 4 weeks?
I mean, could we get, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
we don't want
can
to
get-
disrupt their,
Yeah.
we don't want to disrupt, this is their season. Can we just wait till the end of the year when it gets cold and that, make a motion that they
John.
remove it prior, off-season, before the end of the year,
Depending on the weather too here, so.
after your season. I mean, prior to 12/31/2024.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that's by the end of the year. And we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2149, Craig and LaDonna Jeffries. Petitioner and owners are requesting a variance to allow a 2-foot southwest side setback instead of the required 6-foot for a proposed 10-foot by 10-foot shed. The R1 zone property, excluding 90 feet of the FP zone land off of the southeast side of the property, is known as Lot 61 in the Masons Ridge subdivision, more specifically 4705 Masons Ridge Road in WIA 16 Southeast 22-4.
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll hear from staff, please.
Good evening. Petitioners are proposing to build a 10 by 10 foot shed 2 feet from the neighbor's property line. The ordinance requires a 6-foot setback in the R1B zone. The lot is large, but a decent amount of the lot is either sloped or in the floodplain. Petitioners would like additional space for storage of equipment. Staff is recommending denial on this. The main reasons that we would recommend denial on this, or that we are recommending denial, is petitioner could amend his request to change the size of his building to accommodate same square footage, and then because of the steeped wooded slopes that you will see here, concern about the 2-foot setback and having to either maintain or maintain the building within that 2-foot. And also, during construction, that 2-foot couldn't be maintained if he had a bad relationship with his neighbor in the future.
Thank you. Petitioner or petitioner's representative?
Good evening. My name is Craig Jeffries. I live at 4705 Masons Ridge Road. I am the petitioner. I don't know that you get a real good look on this view, but any concern about maintenance of the building would not be an issue. I maintained this property for 4 years, and I maintain every property I have immaculately. As you can see in this slide, given the front setback and the steep slope that begins directly behind the house, which is about a 50-foot slope on a 40-degree decline, there is only a small amount of space on the west side of the house where any shed of any sort could be constructed. The property line on the east side is even more narrow than this side. This side is about 15 and a half feet. The other side is roughly 11 and a half or 12. Therefore, the only real area that I could locate any sort of outbuilding is on that west side. If you look at this plot drawing, I am attempting to locate the shed as far back as possible so that it is not obtrusive. It is even further back than my neighbor's shed, which would be adjacent to this shed, roughly adjacent. I am adding or attempting to add a set of stairs and a small retaining wall to stabilize the ground behind the shed, the proposed area for the shed, as well as a 5-foot metal fence, aluminum fence. Because of the slope of the ground, it would require somewhat of a unique foundation. We're proposing that we build the shed on a deck that would be level at the front of the front part of the side yard and would have supports approximately 8 feet, 9 feet at the back. Unfortunately, there is no good way to move the shed forward without significantly blocking access and or blocking windows and other structures on the house. As you can see here in the upper left picture, the shed would be 2 to 3 feet off of the deck, the covered porch that's on the back of the house currently. I really don't have a good way of attaching it to the house. If you look in the lower right picture, it was suggested that I actually build it onto the house, but my utilities, ventilation system, all exit on that side of the house, along with a bedroom window that if it were attached to the house would be completely blocked of sunlight. It only gets sunlight for a small portion of the day in the mornings anyway. At that point, it would the back of the shed would be blocking the window and any view of the front of the house from the window or the porch, the back porch. These are just additional views of the area that we're proposing the shed would set over. These are taking from the lower level of the back porch. There is a small set of pavers that are put in lieu of actual stairs. I do want to attempt to keep some sort of division between the house because of the slope. This is the least sloped portion of that entire back half of the lot. If you go further to the west, it's even steeper than these steps. And if you go on the other side of the house, it is a steeper slope. This is a view from the back of the house. It's about a 50-foot drop from the porch. And on the right-hand side, you've got an even better view of the slope. I'm asking for the variance because of the unique topography of this lot. Normally, I would absolutely stay within the variance or the setback lines and simply put the shed in a backyard, which I'd say between a third and a half of my neighbors have done, so it's not inappropriate for the neighborhood. 10 by 10 is the limit on the width and height, or width and length of the shed.
You're at 5 minutes.
Okay.
Wrap it up.
So I will save any further comments for if there are objections. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition to the petition?
Hi, my name is Alan Hoffman, and I live at 4740 Masons Ridge Road, across the street. I'm on the board of directors for the Masons Ridge Homeowners Association. I also received a registered letter from your department because of my proximity to the variance request. Tonight, I'd like to speak in opposition to the variance on behalf of the board of directors of the Masons Ridge HOA. Mr. and Mrs. Jeffries own Lot 61 within our subdivision that is governed by our covenants. Within our covenants, registered at the county clerk's office, is Article 3, restrictions concerning size, placement, and maintenance of dwelling units and other structures. Section 3C, concerning front building setback lines, reads, quote, "Front building setback lines are established as shown on the plot. Between said lines and the right-of-way lines of the street, no structure may be erected or maintained. Additionally, no structures may be erected or maintained between the side or rear lot lines and the right-of-way lines of the street," end quote. We believe that granting of this variance will violate the last sentence of Section 3C of our covenants. By allowing a structure to be erected as requested within the deviation would necessitate additional actions to preserve our covenants. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Jaden Brown, 4645 West, County Road 700 North, Mulberry, Indiana. I personally have no issue with the petitioner putting up a shed. I think every person deserves a shed. But my concern as a student at Purdue is I don't understand how it would be feasible to build any structure on something of that much slope. I'm just concerned as a citizen that you would put that up and it would be down at the bottom of that valley here in a few years. I think that it just would be unwise and might not be standing for too long. Like I said, I think he deserves a shed, but I'm just extremely concerned from an engineering standpoint how that would work. So kind of in opposition, but not, because everyone deserves a shed. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition. You have a chance to rebut.
Question, Steve, before we
Yeah.
go. I thought when you asked for someone to speak in favor, was there someone that wanted to speak in favor and they just didn't get up here?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I thought I saw some movement in the back, but if not, we'll proceed.
Thanks for double checking.
I did speak with all of the neighbors directly around me. Mr. Hoffman is not directly near my property, and he could not see the shed from his property at any point. First, I want to address the Purdue students' concerns. That's what building codes are for. That's why we have a permit system, and I am an engineer, and I do understand how to build a structure properly. Secondly, could I get the clicker? I did anticipate the HOA denying or speaking in opposition based on Article 3, Section 3, Sentence 3. If you read the article, they are misinterpreting this section. The first two sentences are clear and concise. It talks about distance between the front of the road and setback and right-of-way, and that is in the instance that the right-of-way actually exceeds the setback, you do not build into the right-of-way. For the third line, if you look at the sentence, additionally, no structures may be erected or maintained between the side and rear lot lines and the right-of-way of the street. Break this down. What possibly could that mean? There's three ways to interpret strictly how it's being written. No structure may be maintained between the rear lot lines and the right-of-way of the street. There's only one street at issue here. This is not a corner lot. It does not have a street to the rear that abuts it. So if that is the way you interpret that part of the statement, my house cannot exist because it exists between the right-of-way of the street and the rear property line.
If I can interrupt you?
Yes, sir.
We actually don't consider covenants as part of this body.
Okay.
So that the covenants are an agreement between you and your neighbors. And so
Okay.
if we were to grant this variance, you still have to work that out with your
I
homeowners
understand that,
association.
but I would like to rebut their claim that this is
Correct.
against HOA covenants, and if that is the only reason why the HOA is opposed to this, I believe they are wrong, and we can deal with that after the fact, assuming the variance is approved. However, the third sentence that they're discussing actually addresses any additional street that might be adjacent to the side or rear lot lines that has a right-of-way. If you look at the end of the sentence, it speaks specifically to right-of-way. If you look at the other points, building between the rear and side lot lines would actually force you to build on the point of the lot. It doesn't make sense unless you interpret it the way that I've stated. I think they are misinterpreting it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board? If not, we've got a ballot.
I show 7 votes in favor and no votes opposed.
Variance is granted. And we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2150, Melissa Venable, SCCP. Petitioner, with consent of owner, is requesting a variance to increase total signage of the front lot from the allowed 110 square feet to 170.8 square feet for a new Town Place Suites Hotel on Lot 8 of Sagamore Commons. The property, Zone GB, is located at 1750 Sachem Boulevard in West Lafayette, Wabash 1, Southwest 23-5.
Second.
Motion and second. Hear from staff. Amanda, please.
Thank you. We are on the west side here in a business park just behind where the Culver's and Popeyes and Panera is along Sagamore here. This property is for a new hotel, a Town Place Suites. And as I said, it's in the Sagamore Commons Business Park. This was rezoned to GB in 2018. We also have OR to the north and PDRS just beyond that. The area is mainly business dominated. To the west, you do have some residential. It's an up-to-date aerial here. You can see this building and the one next to it are both under construction. They're pretty close to being completed, I believe. We are talking about the corner lot in this case. Sachem Boulevard, not sure how to pronounce it, was recently improved to extend down to Cumberland Avenue. You can see the proposed signs here. This lot, the one adjacent to it, are both hotels. A third is being planned across the boulevard. The road itself is also recently improved. It sits at the corner where Sachem makes a 90-degree bend. For that reason, the West Lafayette AO administrative officer determined that they would receive the benefit of having two road frontages, which provides additional square feet for the signs on site. So a sign worksheet is always completed whenever we have sign proposals to determine how much square footage is allowed on site, which came out to 105 square feet. This property is unique in that it is within a business park, which is a defined term. This particular term and related ordinances were added to the UZO in 2020 and was the result of cooperation between our office and the developer of this land specifically. The amendment sought to create a certain aesthetic for the business park that limited the amount of signage on each individual property. It allows a gateway directory sign, also a defined term, at the entrance to the park on the main arterial road, in this case Sagamore Parkway. I have a picture of that sign here. You can see it from Sagamore just beyond the Culver's. Here it is looking from the other direction by the Popeyes. That's kind of a closer up picture. All businesses within the park are provided with 14.38 square feet of space on that main sign, as well as their allowed signage on site, and no more than one monument sign equal to up to 50% of the business's total allotment of signage located on its sign lot. Petitioner's request in this case is to allow 170.8 square feet of overall signage on site, which is a 55% increase from the permitted amount. This consists of a monument sign of 6.8 square feet and two fascia signs of 82 square feet each. Petitioner's findings argue that the extra amount of signage is needed to allow drivers traveling along the 45-mile-per-hour Sagamore Parkway to safely locate the hotel, and because the hotel is set approximately 905.99 feet from that thoroughfare. Quoting the petitioner, the hotel has very specific branding that will not be visible from Sagamore. While staff does not disagree that customers need to safely navigate to their destinations, staff would point out that the owner bought this property knowing how far it was set back and designed the building on an empty lot such that it was not presenting a dominant face to the traveling public. As you can see in the pictures here, it is on a corner, and they built it such that the smallest side of the building was facing the road and Sagamore Parkway. In addition, most travelers have access to GPS navigation, in which case larger signs such as these are simply unnecessary. As you can see from these pictures, the hotel is clearly visible from Sagamore, Not much exists to impede the view of travelers seeking to find the hotel. Even when the rest of this park is built out, the allowed signage would be sufficient to locate the business and be more in line with the signs of businesses already in operation in West Lafayette. We are recommending denial of this request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner or his or her representative. It's up to you if you want to make a presentation. I mean, as far as arguments for, or?
But if someone rebuts, I can talk afterwards, correct? Like if someone.
Correct.
Okay.
We may have questions for you after too. So that's fine with me. Well, as long as you're here, that works. Anyone wishing to support the petition? Anyone in opposition to the petition? Questions, comments from the board?
I had a question for staff, and I'm not sure if you know right offhand, but I kind of remember this business park reducing the signage was kind of their plan. How is this request in size in reference to what they would be allowed without the reduction for the business park?
The signage on site is the standard signage for any businesses. So it was simply a reduction in the monument sign. With 2 road frontages, you could technically have 2 monuments as long as they were separated by 500 feet of road frontage, which wouldn't apply in this case. But no, the standard amount, the 105 square feet, is what any other business outside of the business park would be allowed.
Okay, so I kind of remember that, is she just wanted a reduced signage, but it doesn't really affect this case? Just the monument portion of it?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
It's just a clarification that it's the monument size compared to the total sign package that they're.
The request is for the overall square footage on
Their
site.
request is for an increase in total
Correct.
square footage, but
The
as far as
monument
monument sign is still relative to the sign package.
Correct.
It just means that they couldn't make an extremely large monument sign and they would have to reduce the fascia signs. They're limited as far as the size of the.
Correct. And the monument sign, in fact, it does meet the ordinance requirements, so it itself is fine. It's just the rest of the signs on site that are putting them over.
The total signage is
Correct.
Going over.
Yes.
Any comments or questions from the board? If not, we've got a ballot.
I have.
You know.
I didn't get a chance to respond. You're too quick.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question for the city staff.
And I just realized that I filled out the wrong ballot on the last case.
Have you been working with the petitioner on
I have.
this project?
Maybe the last.
Correct.
Do you have any concerns?
I don't have any concerns.
Thank you.
Yep.
I forgot to destroy the special exception one. And I just noticed it. I don't know if anyone else did too. I'm the only one? Okay. I'll do we'll fix it afterwards. Hearing no other comments, we have a ballot.
The ballots show 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Variance is granted. And we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2151, Melissa Venable, SCCP. Petitioner with consent of owners requesting a variance to increase total signage on of sign lot from the allowed 44 square feet to 141.4 square feet for a new Home 2 Suites hotel on Lot 9 of the Sagamore Commons. The property zone GB is located at 1710 Sackham Boulevard in West Lafayette, Wabash 1, Southwest 23-5.
Second.
Motion is second, and we'll hear from Amanda, please.
Thank you. We're traveling right next door. This is for a Home 2 Suites, and just like the previous case, also within this business park. The sign worksheet for this came out to 44 square feet allowed because they only have the one road frontage. The request of 141.4 square feet would be an increase of 221% from the permitted amount. And this is a monument sign of 21.81 square feet, which meets the ordinance requirement. That part can't be varied. I should have made that clear before. It's in the definition of business park. So the monument sign cannot be any bigger than 50% of what's allowed on site. And then the fascia sign of 95.6 square feet and a second one of 23.92 square feet. Again, in this case, the hotel is clearly visible from Sagamore. Staff believes that people are traveling here for a very specific reason. They know where they're going. The allowed square footage would safely get them there, and we are recommending denial for this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner, like to say anything? Same as before? Anyone in support of the petition? Anyone in opposition? Comments, questions?
Rabita, are you going to ask the same question of the city?
Yes, I am going to ask the same question of the city.
Thank you.
I didn't need to move, so it was good. So I'm still good. Thank you. Appreciate you asking.
Thanks, Chair.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we've got a ballot.
Ballots show 5 votes in favor and 2 votes opposed.
Variance has been granted. And we'll hear our last case, please.
All right, people in the back, wake up. I move to hear and vote on BZA 2152, Madeline Gray case. Petitioner and owner, represented by Sean Cornell case, is requesting a variance to reduce the front northwest setback along Fernleaf Drive from the required 25 feet to 17 feet to replace an existing front porch on Lot 33 of Happy Hollow Heights. The property, zoned R1, is located at 1732 Fernleaf Drive in West Lafayette, Wabash 17, Northwest 23-5.
Second.
Motion is second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Good evening, everybody. Nathan McBurnett, APC staff. We've got Lot 33 of the Happy Hollow Heights subdivision here, the first subdivision platted along Happy Hollow Road in 1953. As was said, the requested variance is for a covered porch on the front of the property, which would be on the west side. We've got kind of a unique situation here for a lot. We've got kind of a thumb-shaped lot here. There's pretty extreme topography on this lot. From a site visit, this is just kind of a view of the front of the house where the stoop used to be right there. As you can see, that door's just kind of floating about 2 feet above the ground, which has been raised by that retaining wall, which is about 3.5 feet high. The total grade of the site, from what we determined from the site visit and the GIS data, is about 6 feet from all the way down near Happy Hollow Road all the way up to the adjacent property. The site is currently, or the dwelling is currently served by this side porch, which is one of two kind of at-grade entrances. The other one is on the back side, which is the walkout basement entrance. You can see kind of the extreme topography here as well. Given the extreme topography, other unique aspects of this site is the lot is actually a few thousand square feet smaller than what's required in R1 zoning. It's just over 7,000 square feet, and it's supposed to be 10,000 square feet. It's legally non-conforming. The southwest corner, which is visualized here as well, is also about 30 feet within the setback. It was built in 1961 prior to the 1965 ordinance, so that would also be legally non-conforming. This is a picture of the site plan. As you can see, the proposed porch, the shaded part is the original stoop that was there and that was removed, so it's extending a little bit further than that. And then we've got a profile view here of what that porch will look like. So the entire, wish I had my pointer here, the entire extension, thank you, that's the porch. As you can see, the roofed part is about 3 feet of overhang past the actual enclosed structure. Regarding the tests, staff is of the opinion that granting this variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. Use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance request, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. In fact, it would probably be quite the opposite. I'm sure this would be a nice addition to the community compared to what's currently there, just kind of a floating front door. The terms of the zoning ordinance are being applied to a situation that is not common to other properties in the same zoning district. The thumb-shaped lot is unique among other standard rectangular lots in the R1 zone and is also fronted by streets on all but one side. The existing disposition of the residence, which was built before the 1965 ordinance, the lack of buildable area on the lot, and the relatively extreme elevation change present a circumstance uncommon to R1 zone properties. Strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in an unusual or unnecessary hardship as defined in the zoning ordinance. This is mainly due to the fact that any kind of addition that would be required to be able to access this front door would require some kind of encroachment into the setback. Because 2 feet of space, I think I put 1 foot in the staff report, which was a mistake, but 2 feet of buildable area is not enough for a front door. The enclosed porch is very typical of porches of this type. And the variance sought does provide only the minimum relief needed to alleviate the hardship. As I said, the proposed porch is pretty typical. It's a functional addition to an otherwise small house that would provide necessary area for entry, storage, and seating. And the enclosed area of the porch would only extend 2 feet further into the setback than the original stoop, with the overhanging roof extending an additional 3 feet further from the enclosed area to match the existing roof design. I'd be happy to take any other questions.
Thank you, Nathan.
Oh, and staff recommends approval, sorry.
The important part. Petitioner, his or her representative.
John Case, 1732 Fernleaf. And frankly, I've
going to keep my mouth shut. I can't improve
Okay.
on what they just said. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Hi, I'm Sarah Waskren, 337 Laurel Drive. I live just a few doors down on the next cul-de-sac, and I think this would be a great improvement to the neighborhood, and I'm very excited about it.
Thank you. Speaking in favor of the petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Hearing none. Questions, comments from the board? We have a ballot.
I think I know how this one's going. I said I think I know how this one might go. I guess we'll see.
It should go.
Yeah.
Oops. Tear into place.
Shows 7 votes in favor and none opposed.
Variance is approved.
That is.
Administrative matters. Unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered. I thank everybody for coming, and I'll take the last motion.
I move to adjourn.